Shortly after the start of 3.25, I made a video documenting the changes to Ward since its introduction in Expedition League all the way back in patch 3.15 all the way up to now. And in that video I discussed the use case of Ward as a defensive mechanic rather than just an enabler for Ward Loop or Night Grip builds, which is presumably the originally intended function of Ward, for it to be used in a somewhat similar manner to Energy Shield as a defensive layer. Fast forward a month into Settlers League and two very significant changes in patch 3.25 were all it took for Ward to become a bit more of a functional choice as a defensive layer mechanic that it was seemingly always intended to be. Firstly, where previously Ward was unreliable, it's now a lot more consistent thanks to a 2-second base restore time. And secondly, Ynda Stand, a unique belt which enables Ward in a way to gain this stat from other equipment slots. But to really understand the adoption of Ward as a defensive layer in 3.25, we need to look a bit deeper at what's being played. Because another really big change in this league that has enabled Ward to be useful in a larger variety of archetypes is the changes to block. Specifically, the new Gladiator Ascendancy and the new unique shield, Svalinn. Attack and spell block pair incredibly well with Ward because Ward only breaks when you actually take damage from a hit, so all of those hits that you block, Ward remains intact. And the 2-second restore time together with Lucky Block, either from the Gladiator's More Than Skill Ascendancy Notable, or from Svalinn, only serve to amplify this synergy. The lower the amount of incoming hits that actually deal damage to you, the better Ward is as a defensive stat, to be there when you need it most to absorb damage of a hit which makes it through those avoidance layers. This synergy is showcased in builds making use of Ynda Stand, of which a large amount are Necromancers, mostly Spectre builds, and of those builds the majority are using Svalinn. This makes sense as the Necromancer is able to get a decent chunk of attack and spell block from the usage of Bone Offering, allowing for a minimal investment into block elsewhere to be able to cap both blocks. And with Svalinn's Lucky Block modifier, this results in an effective, unconditional 88% chance to block incoming attack and spell hits. With a well-crafted body armor, Ynda Stand will provide upwards of 3,500 base ward, and in the rare case when a hit does make it through that effective 88% chance to block, it will be absorbed either wholly or partially by ward before that damage is taken from any other resources such as life. Now, this isn't to say that Ward is an incredible mechanic that every build should just start using. Far from it actually, because Ward has a few glaring issues, the first being damage over time. Some of you may be following Palstron's progress with his Ward-based Trickster build, or perhaps you're even playing that build or something similar to it. I'm not going to get into the full mechanics of that build because I intend to cover that one in a build overview series video of its own, since it's such a unique build. But importantly, Palstron's build uses a heavy amount of Ward combined with Dissolution of the Flesh, two mechanics which struggle in a big way against damage over time. And in the case of Ward, it doesn't just struggle with damage over time, it simply doesn't interact with damage over time in any way. Ward only functions for incoming hits. Now, for Palstron's build, he's gone out of his way to try to solve this problem, becoming immune to a bunch of damage over time sources such as bleeding, poison, and burning ground, but there are some damage over time effects in the game which you simply cannot ignore. You can't become immune to them, it's hard to avoid them, and this will always be a bit of a flaw in the makeup of Ward as a defensive mechanic. You need to be able to deal with incoming damage over time effects in other ways. Another issue that Ward has is that it will always break no matter how much damage it absorbs. For example, if you have 5,000 ward and you take a hit of 100 damage, the full 5,000 ward will be broken and will provide no benefit until it is restored. Now, unlike the problem with damage over time, this particular issue feels like more of a mechanical trade-off for how ward functions. See, ward will always restore in the specified window of time, by default 2 seconds, which can be vastly sped up using modifiers for faster restoration time. And this is unlike Energy Shield, which will only begin recharging if you haven't taken damage within that window of time. But Ward will restore regardless of if the character is taking damage during that period of time or not, which adds to its reliability with that significantly lower base restoration time. With that said though, this is still something that you need to be aware of. It's always possible, though unlikely, that a tiny hit gets through your avoidance layers and breaks your ward, and then you take a much bigger hit which also gets through your avoidance layers in the downtime for ward restoration. Now would be a good time then to mention Olroth's Resolve, a unique flask exclusive to Expedition content which significantly lessens your ward but makes it so that ward does not break, allowing it to function as a flat reduction to hit damage taken from other resources. The entire design of Olroth's Resolve is based around the existence of ward's breaking mechanic, and if ward functioned more similarly to Energy Shield, the purpose of this flask would be mostly mute. In fact, it's a great time to mention most of the ward-based unique items, because the introduction of Ynda Stand in 3.25 and the buffs to ward have completely revitalized these items and given them use cases in entirely new builds, which is amazing. This is why I love unique items being added to the game every league. You just never know what kind of new potential these items will unlock when they're combined with older mechanics, some of which haven't been looked at for many leagues, possibly even many years at a time, and suddenly a new thing is introduced and a powerful combination is born. Now, I do want to say that I think it's awesome that ward is finally being used as a defensive mechanic with broader application, and I kind of want to use the end of this video to discuss the future of ward in PoE, because a lot of things have lined up perfectly in 3.25 for ward to be useful. The existence of Ynda Stand, of Svalinn, the Gladiator rework, the baseline ward buff, and one really important thing not mentioned in this video just yet, the ease of access of high-level ward gear bases from shipping rewards. All of these factors have played into ward being as useful as it is in 3.25. Now, I expect Ynda Stand and Svalinn will go core. In what capacity is anyone's guess. They may be nerfed, or they may just be very rare. And at the same time, I don't expect the ward restoration time buff to be reverted either, so that's likely sticking around. But one thing I really do want to see from GGG in 3.26 and beyond is this level of access to ward gear that we currently have via shipping to be maintained somewhere in the game. Whether that be through buffs to Expedition so that Gwenin or Rog offer ward bases by default, or perhaps it's through the core implementation of the Settlers mechanic if it does go core. How it happens isn't too important, I think, but just making high-level ward bases more accessible would be a great step towards making ward more of a staple mechanic beyond just patch 3.25. Are you making use of ward in 3.25 in your build? Let me know how you're getting on with it by commenting below. Thanks for watching this video, and thank you for your ongoing support. As always, stay tuned and stay safe.